of guy teammates like and respect, the kind of guy they listen to and follow, the kind of guy counted on by both sides to bridge the barrier between the ones in uniform sitting on the bench and the one in charge standing behind him. He was also the kind of guy able to understand the game and the men who play it, the kind of guy who are captains and later become coaches. Mike Murphy on this edition of Once a Leaf. Mike, nice to see you. Welcome to Once a Leaf. Before we get into your professional career, it seems to me as a Toronto boy, playing for the Toronto Marlboros was something that you might have thought about at the earliest age. Would that be true?
Absolutely, Mike. Not only did I have the privilege of playing for them, but when I was young, I played on a real good younger hockey team called the North York Knights, and we used to beat the Marlies all the time. So I had the privilege of pounding on the Marlies for 3 or 4 years as a kid, and then as a Bantam, they recruited 6 or 7 guys from that team because that team started to disband, and we went and played for the Marlies, and we became a real forceful team throughout Canada as a Bantam team. So it was a real honor to play for them and put that sweater on. You really carried that sweater with a lot of pride because every kid in Toronto wanted to wear that sweater. So when you were wearing it, you were privileged. But having come from the point where we beat them on a regular basis for the 3 or 4 years before that, and then going to them and being a very successful team was terrific.
But if you're a Marley, the next logical step, and you're a Toronto boy, is the Maple Leaf at the corner of Carleton and Church. So during your junior days with the Marlies, I'm not saying that you might have thought that it was an automatic next move for you, but was that the one that you thought was the best thing for you?
You sure hoped it was. You know, when we first started, we weren't sure how far we're going to go in hockey. As a Bantam, you're a good Bantam, but that's a long way from being a major junior player, and even a farther way from being an NHL player. So we took one step at a time, and we never really looked beyond the one step. When I say we, I mean myself, and I was fortunate to be able to play for the major team and then be drafted. You know, disappointed that I wasn't drafted by Toronto. Probably slightly, but the fact that I was drafted by the New York Rangers, you're saying, hey, this isn't so bad. I'm going to an original 6 team, a top team. I'm drafted fairly high. I'm going to get a chance to play professional hockey and maybe even the NHL at some point. So
you say maybe in the NHL. So did you still have doubts about your ability even after excelling with the Marlies and then being a second-round pick of the Rangers in 1970?
Yes, I did, Mike, because? You back then there was 12 teams, and the 6 original teams were very strong in their organization, deeper in their organization than the other 6 who you just expanded to in '67. So most kids coming up would have preferred to be with an expansion team because it was wide open, where a traditional team, especially the Rangers, were very deep in their talent, especially at the NHL level. Gilbert, Hadfield, Rattel, Horton was on defense, Jockerman, Villamere, Park. I mean, they were deep all through. And could you make their team? That was the question that hung over my head as a kid.
So it wasn't the NHL so much as it was, can I make the New York Rangers?
Could I make the Rangers?
And I think that apprehension proved to be warranted because you go to the Rangers, they immediately ship you to the minors at Omaha in the Central League. Okay? Play pretty well.
Well, that was a great year. First of all, my coach down there was Fred Sherrill. And Fred Sherrill was a genius who had never been in the NHL. So when you went there, he had such psychological hold on you, and he would say things to you that played on your mind, that it really became an advantage to play for him. He played me with 2 older guys. When I say 2 older guys, they were 24 and 25, but taught me a lot about the minor leagues, taught me about performing on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is often what it is. It's a 3 games and 3 nights, and you've got to be ready. And sometimes it would be Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, so 4 games and 5 nights. And I learned an awful lot, and Fred liked me, which I guess is important. As a player, you want the coach to like you because he's going to use you in different situations. So my first year in the minors, my first year in pro, I played for Fred Sherrill. I played with real quality players, and the coach liked me, and they're a huge advantage.
Back with Mike Murphy right after this.
Hey, where'd this come from?
Well, Gary, it came from a dream that started high up in the Rocky Mountains. It came from a belief that beer could be made to taste colder, smoother. And while Coors Light is brewed around the world, it's still the same brewing tradition that's cherished in the hearts and minds of men today.
Just gonna head back down.
Okay. Ice Cold Coors Light, the silver bullet.
You've been looking forward to a celebration this big all year. It's Red Lobster's Big Seafood Festival, a feast of new combinations of our biggest seafood. Indulge in rock lobster tail, king crab, and jumbo garlic shrimp. Only at Red Lobster.
Who said you have to stand still to create a great still life? Capture spontaneity, not blurriness. Panasonic digital cameras with optical image stabilization. Panasonic. Ideas for life.
We're back with Mike Murphy on Once a Leaf. Mike, you came off a tremendous rookie season in the Central Hockey League. And it would be safe to say, as an outsider, that those doubts about being able to make the New York Rangers, I won't say disappeared, but would have been reduced. True?
No question about it. I started to feel full of myself and thought for sure I could play given the right opportunity. Still, the opportunity to play for the Rangers was difficult, especially when you look down the right side. Bill Fairburn, Rod Gilbert, Bruce McGregor. And back then we only dressed 19 players, not 20 like we do today. So you really had 3 lines, 2 extra forwards, and 6 defense. And I wasn't going to be one of those guys because those were established star players, and the Rangers were on the cusp of being a Stanley Cup team. So to crack that lineup was going to be very difficult for me. Yet Emil Francis, who was the gentleman who drafted me and who put me in the minors the first year, gave me some opportunities at training camp. I remember playing a game in Kitchener for the Rangers against the Red Wings. And on the Red Wings were Mahovlich, Delvecchio, Howe. It was like I should have had my autograph book with me because it was really, I was in awe that night of who was in our dressing room and who was in their dressing room.
Why did you decide to quit hockey in 1971?
How did you know that? I didn't quit. I didn't want to quit, but I just felt in those times you were grossly underpaid when you were playing in the minors. And I thought, well, if I'm going to play in the minors, then I'm going to get paid at a decent wage. So I held out for a better wage and ended up getting a better wage. It took about a month or 5 weeks to get it. But finally we got it. We didn't get it in salary. We got it in a signing bonus, which you're supposed to get 1 signing bonus. It was your first year, and then your wage, and the next year was just your wage. And I convinced them to give me a signing bonus my second year, so it made me a fairly highly paid player, especially if you were to go to the minors, which is where I started. When I came back, had made the deal with the Rangers to come back. They sent me to the minors, and I was in the minors for 4 games and then traded to the Blues.
So your decision your decision to pack in hockey at the age of, what were you, 21, 22 years old, to sell cars in downtown Toronto.
Yeah.
That was a short-lived, negotiation
It
ploy.
was a bluff that paid off, I
But you
guess.
weren't serious. I mean,
No.
if they'd have called your bluff and said, you know what, this is the deal, end of story, you're not going to give up hockey.
I think the Rangers recognized that they were drafting a lot of good young players, and they were able to turn 2 and 3 young assets into a decent player, and that's what they did in this case here. They traded, it was a 3-for-3, but really, essentially, they wanted to get Gene Carr, who was a #1 draft pick that year with St. Louis, and a very, everybody was enamored with Gene's skills and his skating ability. So the Rangers were able to pluck him from St. Louis for 3 young, proven minor leaguers, and Jack Eagers, Andre Dupont, and myself. So it gave all 3 of us who were striving for that opportunity to play in the NHL, that opportunity in St. Louis.
So you go to the Blues. It works out, right? You now know that you belong in the NHL. True?
Well, you think you always strive to do better, to keep your place, to maintain your spot.
Well, you do pretty well. 20-goal man, right? When 20 goals meant something. And so,
Thanks, Mike.
True?
Well, that's an interesting story right there, because I have to give the people who ran the Blues a great deal of credit, because for 10 games, I got nothing. I got no goals. I might have had 1 assist, very few penalty minutes. I was very shaky. And they were probably looking from their perch down and saying, we made a bad deal. This guy's not going to get it done. And I often tell kids today, stay with it, keep working, stay on course. It'll happen if you keep doing the good things. And sure enough, in my 11th game against the New York Rangers, I got 2 goals. And then it was like the floodgates opened. It was a goal and an assist, and then 2 assists. And then, so the numbers did.
And the confidence is there now.
Right.
We'll be back with Mike Murphy in a moment.
This portion of Leafs TV is brought to you in part by Direct Energy.
Technology has made your morning easier. Why not your shave? The Philips Smart Touch XL is designed to shave more with every touch, with 3 shaving rings in each shaving head. And because now it pivots to stay on your face and neck, even tricky hairs are cut. Simplicity is making every stroke count.
310-4466. Real Italian pizza. 310-4466. Gino's is the place. 310-4466. Pure Italian passion. 310-4466. You're gonna love the taste.
With HockeyBack, PokerRoom.tv is excited to bring fans an exclusive special offer. Sign up for a free account with the promo code Toronto and be automatically entered for your chance to win great hockey prizes. PokerRoom.tv is giving away pairs of tickets and VIP Sweet Night packages throughout the entire season. This year, when the action ends on the ice, keep the adrenaline going and bring your game online to experience heart-pounding excitement and intensity like you've never experienced before. Get your game face on and play to win at PokerRoom.tv. Meet them and beat them.
In the interest of providing you with the best programming possible, Leafs TV wants to know what you think. Give us a call at 416-815-2440 or go to mapleleafs.com and contact us with questions, comments, or suggestions. Leafs TV, official station, Leafs Nation.
Our guest is Mike Murphy on Once a Leaf. Mike, you're in St. Louis, and you're doing some pretty good things for the Blues. 20-goal man your first year, on your way to 20 your second year. And all of a sudden, the Blues trade you near the end of the season. And the obvious question is, why? Why would they get rid of a young guy who is proving to do the job that they wanted him to do, plus more? Doesn't make sense on the surface.
Who knows why for sure. I'm sure I fell out of favor in some fashion. Jealousies.
And you said you're a single guy in a pretty hip town, right? St. Louis?
Possibly that. Possibly a single guy in a hip town, and innuendos, rumors get back, which I don't think were founded, but you never know who it influences. And I think maybe the bottom of it is they needed that puck-moving defenseman who could skate and look like he was going to be a star in the league, so they took a chance. They said, we got a good young player here who's a forward. We can trade him for a good young player who's a defenseman. That's always a pretty good deal in the hockey business to get a defenseman for a forward.
It's also a nice thing to see that the club that originally drafted you wants you back again.
Well, they liked me twice, but they didn't like me twice, too.
True enough. But you go to the Rangers, and at the tail end of the season, almost win the Stanley Cup, right?
Yeah.
Almost.
Well, we should have won the Stanley Cup.
I say almost. Yeah, you were a serious contender.
We had a terrific team. We had a really good team. We actually beat Boston, who were the defending Stanley Cup champions that year. We beat them in 5 games. And we had an excellent team. Steve Vickers, Walt Tkachuk, Billy Fairbairn were probably our top line. And that's Rattel, Gilbert, and Hatfield were our second line. People wouldn't believe that, but that Tkachuk line was so good. And we had a great defense, great goaltending. We had everything. We had depth. Bobby Russell was on the 4th line. I was playing with Bobby Russell and Gene Carr. And we didn't get a lot of ice time, but when you're playing behind this group of players, you just try to do your little part, fit into your little role, and if you could do it, you were going to reap the benefits of a pretty successful team, which is what we were.
Go back to training camp in September, start off, and then you and, ironically, Gene Carr, the principal in the first trade involving St. Louis, the two of you are in a serious action.
Right. We were in Boston. I want to say it was the 3rd or 4th game of the year, and we both had a good start. We were playing regularly on different lines, but playing regularly, and we were happy with our start. And we were actually getting back for curfew. It was around 1 o'clock or 10 to 1, and we were hustling back for curfew that night. And we got into a cab, got hit by a police cruiser going through an intersection, and did a lot of damage. It concussed both Gene and myself. We were right out of it. There was a death in the accident. The ironic thing is, out of one of the night spots came Derek Sanderson. And Derek Sanderson actually drove us to the hospital, took care of us. And we got out of the hospital at 5 or 6 in the morning, went over, and Larry Popane was the coach. And he sent us both back to New York because we were literally right out of it at that time.
You recover, and before you can get back with the Rangers, they move you in the most significant thing I think that probably happened to you professionally. They trade you to the Los Angeles Kings. Big player trade, right? Gilles Marat was the main guy coming the other way. But now you go to the West Coast, and it seems your career takes off.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that, again, is, as I credited Fred Sherrill, I would have to credit Bob Pulford. Bob Pulford actually, believe it or not, before he traded for me, we were playing the Kings in New York. And I was with the Rangers, and I was in the dressing room. I was getting some physiotherapy on my chest and trying to make a comeback, get back in the lineup. And he walked right in the medical room, and he's the coach of the other team. Well, he walked right in the dressing room, right around the corner in the medical room, and I was sitting there. And I'm thinking, what is he doing in here? And I knew Pulley from playing a little bit against him when he was in L.A. and I was in St. Louis, but from a golf course here in Toronto. We played some golf together. So he walked in, he says, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm doing all right. And Pulley's never the most sociable guy at the best of times. And, well, what's going on with you? Are you going to play soon? Or how are things going? Are you going to get back? And I said, yeah, I'm ready to play now. So he said, oh, okay, that's good. Well, good luck. See ya. And he walked right back out again. So I didn't think anything of it. I just thought he was just a well-wisher. Well, the next day I'm at practice. I'm on the ice, and I get a call from Emil Francis. He calls me and says, we drafted you, and we traded for you once, and we're now trading you the second time, and he traded me now.
We'll return with Mike Murphy right after this time.
Annual Holiday Winterfest. First time you couldn't make it home, brother. Sarah brought her new camera phone, and I broke out a standard. Just like every year, we have you holding it down between the pipes, playing with Spike, and manning the third seat for the bobsled team. You were looking a little thin. Time for dinner. The holidays just wouldn't be the holidays without you. Enjoy the pigs, brother. We missed you. Hope to see you soon. For real.
What do I control? I don't control the bumps and the bruises, the crowd, or who covers me. I don't control the bounces, the shootout order, or for that matter, what happens outside the rink. There are a lot of things in life I don't control. But then again, there are some things that I do.
Get your RBK gear at Sport Chek. Sport Chek, the power of sport.
Hi, I'm Mark Messier with an update on the Cold FX NHL All-Star Fan Balloting presented by 2K Sports. You can help choose this year's NHL All-Star Game participants. Just click to vote for your favorite players. Visit NHL.com or use your Bell cell phone to vote. Vote often. You'll be entered for a chance to win a trip for two to see the All-Star Game in Dallas with me. Thanks to Cold FX.
Now you're seeing the All-Star stuff.
Click to vote, then watch the NHL All-Star Game January 24th on CBC.
Behind every person who is touched by cancer, there's a growing force fighting all types of cancer in communities across the land. The Canadian Cancer Society. Join us.
Our guest is Mike Murphy on Once a Leaf. And Mike, you truly found a home on the West Coast in Los Angeles. You have 10 seasons, outstanding player. I mean, captain of the team, right?
Yes.
And you kind of personified the Kings. I mean, you were the guy. You were the face of the Kings for most of those 10 seasons, and averaged over 20 goals a year. Looking back, that experience for you kind of set the table for everything that had preceded and everything that followed. Would you agree?
Yeah, no question. It was a rewarding stint in the National Hockey League, and I look back now fondly on my career. I have no regrets. You always wish you could have played better and more and longer, but I had a great go of it, and it was, I was treated properly. I feel like I treated my employer properly, and it worked for me.
You play, and then you end up staying in the organization as an assistant coach, and then you become a coach, a head coach, the coach of the Los Angeles Kings.
Well, I became the head coach of the Kings at extenuating circumstances. Pat Quinn got expelled, who was the head coach at the time, so I took over kind of a difficult situation, a team that was a little bit disheveled from this whole event. And at 37 years old, had I seen enough, had I been through enough as a coach to deal with it? Probably not, as I look back now. Made some errors, but tried to grab the bull by the horns, tried to approach this thing right, tried to do the right things to really put hockey in the forefront in Los Angeles, which I don't think it ever got there, maybe with Gretzky for a period of time, but it's a difficult environment to do that in.
And you began a relationship with Pat Quinn.
Right.
In Los Angeles. Quinn goes to Vancouver. Shortly thereafter, you go to Vancouver as an assistant. And then, an interesting move. Assistant in Vancouver, and then head coach of the Milwaukee Admirals of the International League.
Right. I wanted to coach again. I wanted to run my own team, and it was right. It was the right timing. There was a vacancy there, and I was able to talk to Pat about it, and we just bought a new house, so it was a difficult move for my family. And from Vancouver to, West Coast lifestyle to Midwestern U.S. lifestyle, it's difficult for my kids who are all grade 8 or younger, and it was outstanding place to work. I worked for terrific people in Milwaukee. I loved it, and it taught me a lot. Again, you're trying to grow yourself as a hockey administrator, as a hockey coach, as a hockey manager, and I think it did that for me, and it gave me the opportunity to pick up the phone and call Cliff Fletcher and
get to Toronto. All right, that's an interesting story. Elaborate, if you will.
There was an opportunity with Toronto at the time because Tom Watt, who was a good friend of mine, had taken over about mid-season, and he only had one assistant, Mike Kitchen. And I picked up the phone one day and I said, Tom, are you looking for any other help? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. I'd be very interested in talking to you about a position as assistant coach. I said, great. He says, but you should talk to Cliff because he's going to come in and take over. Cliff Fletcher he was talking about. It was a very short chat. Cliff just said, what's it going to take for you to come here? How many years do you want? Da-da-da. And we laid it out for him, and the only thing I regret is I should ask for more money because Cliff gave me everything I wanted, so it was pretty good.
And now you're an assistant coach in the Leaf organization with the Leafs with Pat Burns, another pretty strong character. And I'm interested in your impressions and how you would compare Pat Quinn and Pat Burns working for each one.
Very similar, very similar. No-nonsense guys, highly motivated guys, disciplined guys, very demanding. They're tough to read, yes, but you just sit back and watch. They don't let anything go through the cracks. They don't let people get away with things. They hold the team accountable, which is, I really learned a lot from Burns with that. Burns was a terrific guy in making the team answer the bell. Pat Burns was a top-notch coach, and nothing real flowery about Pat. Everything was a straight line, but everybody knew where they stood, what jobs they were demanded to do on the ice, and all he asked is that you do them with some energy, and you'd get along fine with Pat.
In 1996, Pat Burns is fired or quits. Even to this day, you're not sure which?
No, I think Pat resigned, but I'm not sure. I was with the Rangers at the time. I'd left the Leafs and gone to the Rangers, and I'm not sure what exactly happened, but the team was starting to come apart. It was the team that we'd had great success with through the early 90s. They were getting older. They were getting tired. They weren't able to play with the same aggressiveness, the same jump, and I think that the momentum that we gained was lost, and I think Pat was a victim of that, as coaches often are. And they replaced Pat with, I think, Nick Beverly, and then the summer Cliff Fletcher spent time interviewing people, and I was one of the
Cliff
people
gives you a call,
yeah,
and gives you the job. Where does that rank in your career highlights?
Very near the top in my sporting career. My life as a hockey person, very near the top. To be able to coach the team that I watched as a young boy play, the team that you tried to emulate in your ball hockey games. You were Keon, you were Pulford, you were Mahavlich, and then to get the opportunity to coach them, to be painted with that brush, to be able to be called a Maple Leaf, and a huge excitement on my part and through my whole family's part. But very challenging and fun.
Toughest job you ever had?
A very tough job. Very tough job because our team was not very good. We were coming out of trying to rebuild the hockey team. In the middle of the job, Cliff left, the gentleman who hired me, replaced by Mike Smith, who I wasn't hired by, had some differences with, which we all have differences with hockey people. We always, internal fights are common, but this was not a healthy internal situation, and then ended up losing the job when Pat Quinn came in.
Yeah, Pat Quinn comes in. Ironically, a guy that you'd been with in both Los Angeles and Vancouver, but the circumstances were such that there's no possible way that you could have stayed.
No, I think there had been some things done that had been, we burnt some bridges both ways, and I think that parting company was all right. Like it's tough because it's so visible when you're fired as a coach of the Maple Leafs or as a hockey coach in the NHL, but it's the way it is. It's I don't want to say it's acceptable because I don't ever feel it's acceptable, but it's the way it is, and we learn to build a resiliency up with it and move on.
You're one of the real good guys in the game, Mike, and it's terrific to see you again and to talk to you. Thank you very much, and the best of luck. Maybe we'll see you behind the bench sometime down the road.
Thanks, Mike. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.